Welcome to Bump Set Chat, the podcast where volleyball professionals come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, two-time Olympian with Team USA, Erik Shoji. Welcome to Bump Set Chat, a podcast for volleyball professionals to come on and share their stories, experiences, and advice. And today, I'm honored. I have Erik Shoji. Welcome.
Thank you for having me. So excited to talk about some volleyball.
Yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on. So, the way we kick things off is we do 3 random questions. So are you ready?
Okay, random.
All right, here we go. Most interesting place you've ever played a volleyball match in?
Oof, I think 2 come to mind. One is Tehran, Iran.
Oh, wow.
We played there with the U.S. national team in 2015. It was probably the most insane environment I've ever played in. And just given the political climate of everything, probably that was number 1. And then I would say number 2 was a city in Brazil called Manaus, Brazil, I believe. It's right on the border of the Amazon. And we were able to take like a river boat tour, eat some Amazon River food. Unique experience to kind of be in a city, but then also close to such a, insane forest and nature like that.
Excellent. All right. So you're going back home to the island. What is that one meal you can't wait to get to eat?
My parents either pick up a Korean barbecue plate for me or some sort of poke bowl for me upon arrival. It's a request that they know that they must have for me.
Excellent. All right. So now you're hitting the road. What is on Erik's Spotify playlist?
Depends on the day. Anything that I can sing or dance to in some sort of form.
Yeah.
Now that in dancing may not be very pretty, but it's gonna happen. So, I mostly pop, maybe some hip hop, anything that, like I said, can sing and dance to.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. So let me just first say, it is so much fun to watch you play. You look like you really enjoy it, and the passion you have on the court is amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I mean, I love playing volleyball. It doesn't come without its challenges, but before every game and kind of practice, I try to tell myself, compete out there and have some fun.
Yeah.
So I know that I love this sport. I enjoy competing out there with my team. And if I can bring some joy to the fans or my own team and staff, that's what I'm going to do.
Excellent. And now you're currently playing in Poland for ZAKSA. How's the season going?
Season is a little bit tough, I'm not going to lie. The last 3 seasons, this club has been very successful. I've been a part of 2 of those seasons where we've gotten either first or second in the Polish league. And then the last 3 seasons, we've won the CEV Champions League, which is the biggest European volleyball competition there is. And probably as a professional player, the 3rd biggest thing that you can win.
Oh, wow.
It's an all-European competition. The best clubs in each country compete, and this club has won it 3 years in a row. Unfortunately, we have been eliminated from that competition this year. Season has been a little tough with injuries, and we are currently sitting in 10th place. Okay. Not ideal, but we're working on it.
Nice. And now, for your career, have you been, have you been affected by many injuries, or just sort of like, sort of nicks and knacks along the way?
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate along the way to stay pretty healthy. Of course, there's some bumps and bruises along the way, but overall have stayed pretty healthy. I remember one kind of acute injury that happened in 2015, I want to say, that kept me out from a match. But other than that, I've been okay. But I'm going to knock on some wood right now.
Absolutely. All right. So now you're from Hawaii, and how did you discover volleyball?
Well, I'm not sure if I discovered volleyball or if volleyball discovered me. I was born into kind of a volleyball family. My dad was the coach at the University of Hawaii for 42 years. So I was basically born into the gym, onto the court, watching volleyball from day one. So I was always around the ball, around the gym, around the teams, and just fell in love from a young age and played probably competitively when I was 8. I probably started, and the rest is history, I guess.
Nice. And now your brother plays Kavika, and your sister coaches, or she used to play as well?
Yeah, so my brother is a retired professional player at this point. He played 12 professional years and is also a two-time Olympian, a Stanford graduate just like myself. So played a lot of years with and against him actually. And my sister graduated from the University of Michigan where she played there. She's kind of coached and been a director of operations since her, graduating a while ago. But yeah, we are really a volleyball family.
Nice. And now for you, what is the hook volleyball has on you?
Ooh, it's a great question. I think I really love the team aspect of volleyball. I think that's kind of a cliche, corny answer that people will say, but I really do enjoy just being around the guys and having to figure out, how to compete with six people on a court. I think it's something that's really unique, and you literally cannot win with one player.
Yeah.
Maybe basketball you can kind of get away with one player, soccer, one player scores the goal. With us, there's three touches. At least two people have to touch it every time it's on your side of the court. And I also grew up playing tennis. And by the time I kind of was 16, 17, I didn't enjoy singles anymore. I would rather have played. So I think it's just really that team aspect.
Okay. And now, did you start out as a libero?
I started volleyball before the libero was even a position,
Yeah.
especially in the US. So I grew up playing everything. In club, I played a lot of setter and back row, mostly setter and back row. And then in high school, I also did the same. At one year, I was an outside hitter, which is questionable. But I always knew I was going to be a libero based on my height, even though I'm 6 feet and generally a little bit taller in volleyball. I'm a shrimp. So, in the youth and junior setting in USA Volleyball, I was always a libero, but in high school, I was kind of other positions as well.
Okay, very cool. And now, how would you describe the personality of a libero?
Ooh, kind of energetic and feisty is what I want to say. And someone who loves to grovel and get after it.
Yeah.
It's not a really pretty position. You're not really getting a lot of the credit out there. You're kind of doing a lot of the dirty things, getting on the floor, getting the ball up. So, besides the skill that you have, you definitely kind of have to have this personality of getting after it and, not caring about your body half the time and how you're going to hit the floor and just going after every ball.
Absolutely. And now, so, what is, from a libero standpoint, what's the most rewarding? That perfect pass from that wicked serve that you just got your hand on, or your middle blocker blows his block and he's up there by himself and you dig that up. Which is more gratifying?
Ooh, I think it's a pass. For me, it's a reception, a great pass, in the seam, diving to my left or right. Because servers just absolutely hate when that happens.
Yeah.
And defense, I do feel like there's a certain element of luck involved with some of these plays. And I don't know, I just feel like I can give it to the server a little bit more when that happens.
Nice. All right. So now, back in the high school days, I had Micah Christensen on a while ago, and you guys are really close. Did you guys ever play each other back in high school?
Yeah, so Micah and I went to rival high schools.
Okay.
I went to school and Micah went to Kamehameha schools. And they're kind of two rival private schools on the island of Oahu. But Micah was a freshman when I was a senior, so he's 3 years younger than I am. But that year, we played twice. I won both times. But I'm sure he probably cleared things up and also said that he won twice in college. So between high school and college, we're 2-2. We have played twice professionally, and we also split those. So I think we're 3-3 total.
All right, there we go.
Yes.
And you talked a little bit that you're a really good tennis player in high school. Was it important to have a background in both sports? First, playing a sport that is really team oriented, and also playing a sport where it's really a solo thing, where it's you. So you have sort of both sides of it.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that actually. I never felt that tennis was going to be my sport, moving forward necessarily. It was kind of an outlet for me and something that I just like to compete in. But there are elements of tennis that, definitely translated to volleyball. A bunch of the skills, the hand-eye coordination, the footwork, the split step. A lot of those kind of skills translate between volleyball and tennis. But I think the one thing in tennis is that you're out there alone,
Exactly.
right? If you're, and there's a lot of, mental pressure on you to compete and to, finish a match strong, and you can't rely on other people out there. So I really, as much as, I kind of became a doubles player towards the end, I think a couple of years of singles really helped me develop sort of a mental toughness out there. And then also back and forth, that team aspect into doubles, or even the team aspect of high school tennis. But I enjoyed both. I definitely knew volleyball was going to be my sport, but I love how they kind of complemented each other.
Yeah. Yeah, you're so right with that tennis being, it's just you. There's nobody to blame. It's on you every time. And actually, there was a fantastic a show on Netflix about Marty Fish and his whole career, and the breakdown of a couple of matches, and it was just really phenomenal just to get that take on the solo aspect of a sport.
Yeah, I mean, I think in volleyball there are times where you do feel like you are almost alone out there. When you're in reception and you're already done with your communication with the guys, it's about you and what's in your head. And I feel like a lot of the same positive or negative thoughts can enter your brain, where in volleyball it's like, okay, I feel like I'm going to pass this poorly, and then in tennis it's like I'm going to miss this serve. So those kind of, negative self-talks, we got to figure out how to get out, because as much as volleyball is a team sport, there's some individual skills that you have to take care of. So I learned a lot away from both sides, and I appreciate my tennis career, I'll call it.
Nice. And now so you played ball in high school and played club. When did you start showing up on the sort of the national team radar?
So I was a part of the high performance program from day one, as early as I could be on it. I think it's called the NDTP now, the National Team Development Program. So I was kind of always in that pipeline. I was fortunate enough to make the youth and junior teams, which are the U19 and U21 teams now. So I guess that's where it started. I don't think that necessarily means I was on the national team, but I think middle towards the end of my college career, probably, I started getting more looks, people inviting me into the gym, to the national team gym, and seeing if I could compete with those guys and with, the Pan Am Games, Pan Am Cup. So I was probably around 20, 21 when I started getting a look into the gym.
And now, what was that like, that first experience? You're walking into the gym and there's Olympians and just, the elite of the American volleyball players. Micah talked about, he was just so grateful. It was just humbling.
Yeah, humbling is the perfect word, because you come from an environment where maybe you're a starter, or you're an All-American, and you feel like you are the best player out there and feeling great about yourself. And then you go into this gym and you're gold medalist there, 4-time Olympian there, and you're a nobody, basically. So you have to figure out your way. And luckily I had a brother that was 2 years above me and kind of had been on that path a little bit before me. So you walk in there, you're feeling lost, you really don't know where to go, you're just following people around, you're not loud, you're being quiet most of the time, and just observing and watching and learning as much as possible from these guys.
Yeah, amazing. And now, after high school, you went to Stanford, right?
Yes.
What was that process like? What made you choose Stanford instead of staying on the island, and where else? What other options were on the table?
Yeah, so I was recruited out of high school. I was a lucky, fortunate player that got some looks from different colleges. I was recruited most heavily by Stanford, Pepperdine, USC, and UC Irvine. I ended up taking official visits to all four, but it came down to Stanford and Pepperdine. As a libero, you're not always the most recruited player, and they don't always look at you early on. So I think I was more of a I won't say late bloomer, but someone that the coaches were looking at a little bit later. Enjoyed both of my visits. Both programs have a lot of history, great coaches, great people. At the end of the day, I had a lot of family and friends on the Stanford program, and Stanford is Stanford, and with their academics and campus and all of that great stuff. But Yeah, it was actually a really tough choice. I wouldn't say that it was just a no-brainer for me because I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into that kind of academic realm.
Yeah.
But I'm glad I did. I have obviously no regrets with that, and I'm so glad that I chose Stanford.
Nice. And it's something I've asked, other coaches and players have been on, that adjustment from high school and club. Now you're coming into college, where, like we talked a little bit earlier, you're a star at your team. Now you're coming into a new one. Now adjusting, like you may not be starting, you may be a role player. How was that? That first year for you?
It was an adjustment, like you said, you're kind of a big fish in a small pond in Hawaii where everyone knows everyone, and you're doing great things in volleyball to, Stanford, where the men's volleyball program isn't the biggest thing there. And I just remember being there and being like, okay, I got to get out there and compete hard.
Yeah.
And I think I got in there, worked to be a great teammate, worked hard on and off the court, and I think I just put my head down and I really wanted to start. And that's how I did that. I think the biggest adjustment for me, honestly, was just social life and academic life.
Yeah.
Um, High school was kind of a breeze. I don't mean that in a arrogant way. I just got by somehow.
Yeah.
And I really had no social life in high school. So kind of transitioning to college life, dorm life, communal showers and walking down the hall to brush your teeth and all these different things that I experienced from home.
Right.
That was a bigger adjustment for me than actually competing on the volleyball court.
Oh, wow. And then,
Yeah.
looking, and was your brother there at the same time you were then? Was he there a couple of years?
He was. So he's two years and academic years above me. So that was nice, obviously, to have him kind of. I knew the ropes a little bit. I don't think anything can truly prepare you for, starting day one of college life. But my sister actually was the director of ops for the women's team at Stanford
Wow.
at the time. So as much as there was a transition, that part was pretty easy, just having family there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I felt very comfortable from day one. I think there were some adjustments to make, but it's always nice when you can call up your siblings and be like, hey, I'm feeling this today. Like, can we grab lunch or a coffee or something like that? So that was a big reason why I chose that spot.
Excellent. And now looking back at your time in Stanford, how was, what are some of the highlights that really, stick out for you as, sort of like flashbulb memories?
Ooh, definitely the seasons, and I think highlighted by a national championship my sophomore year, 2010. We won it at home on Stanford campus, in front of a sold out crowd. That was insane. I mean, there's a big story around it, kind of the worst to first narrative, that the team was the worst in the league a couple years before, and we ended up number one that year. So that's a big one. I probably have some, really cool memories that I can't talk about on the pod here. Some maybe 21 and up memories. But I truly enjoyed my experience, as much as I was kind of this shy, sheltered boy in high school in Hawaii. I grew a lot in college and made a lot of cool friends and learned a lot of things there. Yeah.
Excellent. And now, while you were at Stanford, so were you doing some playing with the national team or the national program at the same time, sort of splitting time?
More towards the end of my time at Stanford. I believe my junior year, I started with the national team a little bit. So I had the chance to try out for the Pan Am Cup team, which was really interesting because I was still in school and then flying down like every Thursday or Friday.
Oh, wow.
Towards the end of spring quarter, I believe. So kind of April-ish, May. Flying down, practicing as much as I could, trying to make teams. And I didn't end up making any of the teams, but it was just kind of a fun experience to be back and forth and feeling like this, different student athlete, balancing both and flying and still being in school. And obviously seeing these guys practice and train was really cool.
Right. And now, looking back on it, if we, you can reflect that far back, what would Erik today tell his, freshman Erik to sort of, focus on or not worry about? What advice would you have for him?
Ooh, I think one, perfection is unattainable. I stressed out a lot in college about being the perfect passer and the perfect defender and not getting aced, but then only staying in my lane and not really, helping my teammates out a lot. So perfection is unattainable. And I think the other thing is work harder. I always say that, like, I'm almost ashamed at how hard I used to work in my college days in the weight room. I just had no idea that it could be so beneficial and that teammates were also watching and coaches were watching.
Yeah.
And that trust on the team, or, if they believed in my ability to get a certain ball on the court. So I think if you think you're working, work harder, and you can figure out for you.
Okay. And now, when your college career came to an end, was going pro a no-brainer, or what options were on the table?
It felt like a no-brainer. Like, that's what I wanted to do, considering my brother had been doing it also. I had no idea that I would be 12 years down the road still playing volleyball. For me, I was still studying, actually, my first year overseas to potentially take the MCAT and go to med school.
Oh, wow.
Which seems like such a long time ago and like funny to think about. But I kind of felt like maybe it'll be a year or two. I don't know what my national team career will look like, if I'm even going to be invited to the national team. So I definitely wanted to experience it. I went to Germany my first year. No idea I would be here 12 years later and still doing it.
Wow. And that first year of being pro, is a huge adjustment. New country. Now you're playing volleyball as a profession. You're getting paid for it. What was that whole first year like?
It felt like I didn't even know what I was doing. It felt like I was just going along for the ride. I was lucky that I had an American player and one of my best friends, Brad Lawson, with me that first season. I think he came in probably October, maybe November. I can't really remember. So, looking back at all the things I know now about clubs and how they work and how you should operate on your off days and what you should do between practices, like, I had no idea back then. Like, I was really just following and trying to do my best. So I had a lot of fun that year. I feel like it was a great stepping stone in my career, but I look back and I just think, wow, I was just so naive.
Now, did they approach practice or, training different than what you were used to? And what was that level of play? Was it a big jump going from the college level play to now that professional level?
I don't really remember the practices all that much. I do think it was a jump in level for sure, especially with some of the teams in the German league. I mean, we see German teams doing really well in the CEV, Champions League and CEV Cup in these European competitions. So it's a strong league. I think at that time, like I said, I was pretty naive and didn't know what was going on. But it is true, there is a jump. Any time you're playing against fully mature grown men, they're jumping higher, they're spiking harder, they're serving harder, and that was a small adjustment for sure.
Yeah. And the locker room has got to be night and day from your college years to what the professional locker room is like.
Oh gosh, yeah. I mean, first of all, the language barrier. I think on that team I had a Polish player, a Czech player.
Oh, wow.
German players, and me, and Austrian. So there's a lot of languages going on.
Yeah.
But then in the professional world, you're also dealing with people who are just in different aspects of their life. They're in different time zones of their life. We'll say, I'm coming out of college, I'm 22, and just kind of farting around and having fun. I had teammates with kids and teammates that had to send their children to school the next day or get home to feed their kids and wives. So it's a lot different. We're not talking about class or what party we're going to. We're talking about a spectrum of things in a professional locker room, and that's a pretty big adjustment.
Yeah, absolutely. And now over the years, you've played in a few different countries, different teams. So what are the toughest things for those adjustments? And just being able to, like you said, you've been in this, playing for 9-10 years now. It's that's an achievement too.
Thank you. I mean, I think the first thing that people always talk about is the language barrier. So depending on where you are, there's more or less English. I think if you're a little bit more in Western Europe, there's more English. The more east you go, I won't say Poland is Eastern European because they'll hate me for that, but probably the least amount of English I encountered was in Russia.
Yeah.
But you get by. I think that's probably the biggest thing. And like I said, these players, they have their own lives. So
Yeah.
when you're in college, you don't really have your own life. I mean, that sounds kind of sad, but you know, you're all going home to the same place, you're eating in the same place, you're going to the same classes. Like we all experience different things overseas and where these people are in their lives. So it's definitely a little bit strange to enter practice, say hi to everyone, and then leave, and then you don't see your teammates again. I mean, that paints a pretty bad picture, but you know what I mean. So I think the language barrier, the fact that everyone's doing their own thing in life when you're overseas is something different.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, what is so you're playing in Poland right now. How long is the season?
So professional seasons are roughly 8 months. Normally they're kind of September through early May. I don't know if that's 8 months, but depending on preseason or if you're there, you're here around 8 or 9 months.
Okay. And now what does a typical week look like for you? Are games always on, always like say Wednesdays and Saturdays, or it's sort of all over the place?
It really depends on the league that you're playing in, and then if you're also in these side competitions such as the Champions League or the CEV Cup. If you are in these other competitions as well as your domestic league, you're playing mostly Wednesday, Saturday, Sundays, kind of two games a week, I'll say. The Polish league also has 16 teams, so they cram a lot of matches in as well. In general, you're going to play Wednesday, Saturday/Sunday. Or if maybe there's less teams in your league, you'll play only Saturday or Sunday.
Okay. And now, how does, seeing both sides of it, the national team level and now the professional side, how does the professional side look at analytics and, are you guys breaking down your team's, video review and everything like that? Or are you seeing, is it same on both sides?
I would say it's pretty similar. I think every team has their own way of scouting their opponents and analyzing their different metrics. But in general, all teams have a ton of video, a ton of numbers, a ton of data that they go through to really gain any advantage they can in the matches. I think in USA, I think it was a joke, but our coaches have something like 45 pages of data to go through.
Oh, wow.
They don't give us 45 pages. We have maybe 2 or 3, but the amount of data that they have on these players and these teams from years of competition is absolutely wild. So I don't think every team overseas has that kind of data, but in general, kind of the overall data is pretty similar.
Okay. Looking back on your professional career, what have been some of the highlights?
Ooh, gosh. Again, I have so many memories from the last 12 years, like good and bad and everything in between. Just, I feel so much gratitude for my career and where it's gone. I guess volleyball wise, I've been to 2 Olympics.
Yeah.
Won a bronze medal in one of them, had kind of a tough experience in the other. Obviously, we learn and we move forward.
Yeah.
Professionally, I've won a good amount of medals, and I have also won 2 CEV Champions League. Like I said, was a pretty big competition.
Yeah.
So I've had a pretty good career, and I feel really fortunate for where I've played and where I am now.
Nice. And now, for those college seniors that are thinking about playing pro, what kind of advice do you have for them?
Go for it. I think that's my advice. I mean, a lot of, younger players they feel nervous or anxious or scared to kind of make that leap and to try and go overseas. But at the end of the day, I feel like it's 8 months of your life that you can get an experience out of, and you never know what it could take.
Yeah.
Where it could lead you. For me, it led me to this incredible career that I feel so lucky to have. But like I said earlier, I didn't expect it.
Yeah.
So you never know. And, if you're feeling nervous, find someone that's done it. Most volleyball players these days are going to have someone that they can find that have been overseas or maybe play pro in the US now, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
But really do your due diligence, get really educated about the process to be overseas, what leagues are great, how to live, how to get by, talk to someone about it, and then go for it.
Nice. Now, a second ago, you just talked about, the Olympic experience, Rio, winning bronze. So that is an amazing just journey in itself. I guess, let's see. When was the moment you found out that you were selected and you were going to go to Rio?
Funny enough, it was in the 2016 World League, which is now called VNL. And I think it was the first week of World League. We were probably in June, and it was in Rio. We were in Rio competing.
Oh, okay.
And John Sparrow, our coach, didn't like how our team was competing because he felt a sort of tension amongst the guys, thinking about who was going to make the team. And all of a sudden he said, "Hey guys, meetings tomorrow, we're making the team." And that was like early June, I want to say, maybe mid-June, in Rio, in a hotel. And he just told all of us.
Were you at the point where like you knew you could make it? It's like, yeah, I'm in, or were you like not sure if you were going to get picked?
I remember feeling confident because I had played every tournament up until then. But I think in your first, experience, you just never really know until they say it. So I do remember feeling like this big sigh of relief and feeling like so happy that they had told me that I was going. So I think I had a decent level of confidence just based on prior matches, but you really never know until you know.
Nice. And now, was your brother on the team too? And had he competed earlier?
He had not been to an Olympics either, so it was both our first times,
Oh, wow.
and he probably within 15 minutes of me. So it was a cool little moment for us to celebrate and call our parents, and yeah, I can remember it really well.
Oh, nice. And now, were you a part of the opening ceremonies or the closing ceremonies?
Both. In
Oh,
Rio,
okay.
we were really lucky to go to both. I think in Rio, there was the opening ceremonies, then we had an off day, and then we played.
Yeah.
So we kind of felt comfortable with going to that one. That was just insane. It was so much fun. And actually I remember that closing was even a more positive, amazing experience, especially after winning bronze. It was just kind of a celebration and a party more than anything. So I feel lucky I was a part of both and do it again.
Nice. And now what are some non-volleyball highlights that you could share from, that Rio experience?
Oof. On our off days, we went to these different houses that USA kind of sponsors and purchases. So there's like a PNG house, a USA house. And you spend your off day with family and friends. They're allowed in the house to kind of relax, forget about the competition. Like I said, I'm a tennis player, so I love watching pro tennis. There was a bunch of tennis players in the village. Got a lot of photos, Djokovic, Nadal, Serena.
Nice.
And yeah, I was truly starstruck and embarrassing trying to get those photos. But that's the highlight for sure.
And speaking of tennis, who were some of your tennis idols growing up?
Oof. I think Andre Agassi, of course, was a big one for me. I was never really the offensive type in tennis, more of kind of a defender, scrappiness, kind of like how I wanted to play volleyball. Serena's a big one. Lindsay Davenport for me was an inspiration. My dad knows her parents through volleyball because she's actually from a volleyball family.
Oh, wow.
So she also just like hit kind of the similar way that I did. Obviously me nowhere near that, but like flat, hard, and low over the net. So similar styles, and then how people competed as well. And then, I mean, Federer for me were big ones. Yeah.
Absolutely. And now, Tokyo was a totally different experience. We had the pandemic. Was it sort of the same way you guys all sort of got in a room, figure out who was going?
So that year we had the VNL, which typically is 4 or 5 week tournament all over the world. But that year they bubbled us in Italy, kind of in the southeast of Italy. So we were staying in a hotel, we were stuck in a hotel and on a beach, and then transported to the gym where we were taking tests and, the whole process. But it was probably about halfway through that tournament where Sparrow felt something similar amongst the guys and told us in the hotel in our different rooms, kind of separated from each other. And that's how that happened. Yeah.
Wow. And then sort of the complete opposite of Rio, here's the opening ceremonies and closing in an empty stadium. That must have been surreal.
It was really surreal. It was really eerie almost to kind of have this lead up. We were all in tunnels and masks and led into the stadium, and then it was relatively empty, obviously with some of the celebrations going on, and then we were told to just go in and out. So we were probably in the stadium for 10 minutes and then out and then gone and moving forward. So it was an interesting experience. I'm happy that I was a part of it, of course.
Yeah.
But it was much, much different than Rio.
Yeah. And then, what was you guys didn't have a result you really wanted, sort of want to just give an overview of how the competitive side of the Olympics went for you guys for Tokyo?
Yeah, like I said earlier, it didn't go very well. So in the 2020 Olympics, it was 2 groups of 6. So we were in a pool of 6 and we ended up 5th, and you have to be top 4 to advance out of the group to the quarterfinals. That being said, the 4 teams that finished above us all made the semifinals and won the quarterfinals. So we were truly in the pool of death.
Yeah.
And obviously 3 of the medalists were from our group. So we had a really tough group. We knew that going in, and given the circumstance, we just didn't really respond well. We didn't play very well and came up against some amazing volleyball teams. So yeah, it was really tough. I look back and kind of watch those matches and have to work through it with my sports psychologist and all of this. So it was a learning experience. As tough as it was, it's something that I look back with. And would I trade it? Would I not want to go to the Olympics? No, absolutely not. But I'm excited to learn from it and grow off of that for the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. We look forward, and looking forward, we had September. You guys absolutely killed it at those VNLs and qualified for Paris. How was that tournament?
The Olympic Qualifier was a unique tournament. So it was 7 matches in 9 days, where typically the most we're playing is like 4 and 6 days. So it was truly a grind. I think we had a pretty good build up to that tournament to kind of get in shape, be conditioned for that tournament. But it's also unique because you have to study these opponents day after day after day. So we went to work. It was really cool to see how professional we were and how hard we worked and how we studied our opponents. And then we ended up playing pretty well to finish the tournament 7-0 and finish number 1 and qualify for Paris.
Yeah. Now, any particular teams surprised you that wow, Japan, wow, these guys, they're scrappy?
Yeah, I think we actually weren't surprised by Japan. I mean, at this point, they're number 3 or 4 in the world. They're competing really well and at a high level. In that tournament, I don't know, we just played pretty well to not feel that close. Like, there were some really close sets and we lost a few, but I think at the end of the day, we felt like us and Japan were going to qualify, and that's what ended up happening.
Yeah, excellent. And now, what is it like when you guys all come together? Team USA comes together for that first practice. Micah talks about he loves seeing everybody, and he sees you, and he's like, "Oh yeah, here we go."
Yeah, there's such a different kind of energy when we all get together. We haven't seen each other for 8 months. A lot of us, we're not always texting or FaceTiming, and we keep up with each other's results, but it's not like we're always in touch. So it's really cool to see everyone's faces. Everyone comes in with a certain energy, and it's like, the brothers are back together. That's really what it feels like.
Yeah, nice. And now, from a social media content creation standpoint, you're sort of the king of TikToks, as Taylor said. When you break out the camera, are people like eye rolling or like, all right, that's just Erik?
It's a combo. I feel like guys are used to it now. And so part of the reason I started TikTok was to really promote our team and to get our team more views. And all the guys, if you actually look at my TikTok, I probably am in 70% of the videos. Like, I don't even really put myself in them half of the time, like a lot of the time. So those guys complain, but then when they get the views, they're not complaining anymore. You know what I mean? So there are certain times where guys are like, "Hey, Erik, like, please don't film this. Like, I'm working on this. I'm just not feeling it." And I have respect for that, of course. And then there's other times where maybe they'll whine and then they'll see it later and they're like, "Oh, okay, never mind. That's fine."
And now, are there a bunch of returning faces for this summer's for Paris Olympics that were part of the 2021 team?
Ooh, yeah. I mean, I could probably go through the list, but I would say from the 2020 team, I think there's probably 9 guys
Oh,
still on
good.
the team. I'm trying to think of that roster and who's not involved anymore. Um, Maybe it's 10 out of 12 are still on the team.
Yeah.
But there's a big carryover. I think a lot of us felt like there's a lot of unfinished business here. And if we were still in the right, mindset and body to keep competing for 3 years, then we wanted to go for it.
Excellent. And what advice for those, for those other players that haven't experienced in the Olympics and they're rolling into, to July in Paris, what advice do you have for them?
Oh gosh, I still feel like I'm like figuring that out, what I want to tell myself come July and these months leading up to it. But it's a day-to-day thing, really just take your time, enjoy it, be present. Like I mean it's such corny advice to say be present and enjoy every moment out there, but it's true. Don't get caught, too caught up in the moment, but enjoy your time. And then when we're competing, compete as hard and ferociously as you can out there.
Yeah. And now on game day, do you have any rituals or are there any superstitions you have?
Ooh, so I mean, I feel like I have a certain routine. In Poland here, we either play at 2:45, 5:30, or 8:30. So depending on what time we play, the routine is different. Obviously, a lot of the time we'll have serve and pass, or maybe some sort of stretch or rollout. We'll have a team meal. I like to take a nap if possible, get some caffeine, use the restroom, breathe, and then I'm out on the court.
Yeah. All right. So now I try to get a couple of questions from players or coaches, and I've got a couple of questions for you. So this is from my daughter's club coach, and she said, she
Okay.
has a hard time coaching sort of the serve receive skill. What is the best piece of feedback or you've ever received from a coach or one that you never forgot that has helped you in serve receive?
Ooh, gosh, serve receive is such a. I could talk about passing all day. For me, it's that your footwork and your platform angles are very coordinated and very in sync. Hopefully, one affects the other. Your legs affect the platform affects the legs, and the more that you can work on that coordination and expanding your range with that coordination, for me, is the most important advice that I've gotten.
All right. And then the second one is, how do you stay mentally tough in a serve receive? What's something you tell yourself in, especially after you've gotten aced or struggled to get that pass that helps you push through?
So the first thing, I worked a lot on this with my sports psychologist because I'm really a past thinker. I really ruminate in these mistakes that I can make and get really anxious sometimes. But for me, it's about staying present. So one thing I like to do is wiggle my toes and my feet and tell myself like I'm here, it's okay, like I'm in this moment. And then really just trying to fill your head with positive thoughts. So it's not always about making a perfect pass. For me, I like to tell myself, hey, you're going to fight this off, or hey, you're going to put this at 3 meters. Or sometimes it's really, hey, you're going to get this ball up, because some of the servers that we face are just that insane.
Yeah.
So, I think a lot of players, we know what we're supposed to do and what we're supposed to say to ourselves, but it can be really hard in those moments. So it's something I've had to force myself to really work on.
Yeah. And now a couple times you've referenced a sports psych, and that's something, is that something you discovered later in your pro years, or, was that something you sort of found in the college years that you found helpful?
So I was actually really lucky that one of my coaches when I was in club, as probably a 12-year-old, I had a sports
Oh,
psychologist who was
wow.
a coach. Yeah, his name is Chris McLaughlin. His son Spencer and I played years together. And he kind of doubled as a coach and sports psychologist for as much as you can sports psychologist a 12 and 13-year-olds. So I just remember from a young age, we were reading kind of the wooden books, talking about different chapters, how that applies to volleyball. And then kind of later that applied to college as well. But I didn't really dive in individually until kind of my pro career, we have a sports psychologist on the USA staff, Andrea Becker, who's the blonde lady that's always with us. People are always asking. Another personal sports psychologist who is a volleyball player as well. So it's something I've kind of dove into a little bit more as I've gotten older, just knowing that the thoughts I feel and emotions I feel on the court can really affect how I play and how I want to be feeling off the court as well. So it's something I've worked at, and I have no shame talking about it.
Yeah.
For me, it's been a career and a very positive part of my career. Is it for everyone? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
But something that's been really helpful.
Nice. Yeah, I caught the sort of the podcast you did with Taylor a while ago. And, just you were talking about sort of the introvertness of, you're at college and you're the hives, and it's amazing how, you go from that space and you go on the court where all eyes are on you and you're just sort of in your zone. It's wild how the mind works.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I mean, in that podcast, I kind of highlighted a lot of the social anxiety that I used to feel, as a high schooler. Not as much in college, probably, but, just dealing with, like you said, hives. Like I used to break out in hives when I would feel uncomfortable in social settings. And I would just have these breakdowns where I just felt so uncomfortable. And then being on the court in front of people, I've never felt that sort of emotion. I mean, I've been nervous and felt like, this is a tough scenario, of course, being in the Olympics and playing in different leagues, but the emotions have been really different. And I think it's such a contrast. I really don't know how to explain it or why I feel like that. I had a lot of social anxiety when I was a kid, but volleyball was something that kind of took aside, kind of just let it go. And
yeah.
I come from a family that's pretty social, and that had to be pretty social. I mean, my dad being a head coach and a pretty prominent figure in Hawaii and having to go to different events, but I was never the kid to, talk to a lot of people, or I didn't have a ton of friends. And I didn't go to parties, or I didn't go to any kind of social events in high school, but that, it's all a learning experience. I feel like I've come a long way. And
yeah,
it's interesting now that I do social media and have played injuries, but I look back at that and I kind of laugh at myself, but young Erik was just pretty shy.
Yeah.
I guess that's the word.
All right. When that final season ends for you in your pro career, what do you think you'll end up doing? What happens if Team USA comes to you and say, Erik, we want you to help raise awareness for men's volleyball? What would you do?
I'm in. Yes. I mean, I will be in volleyball somehow. I'll put that out there right now. Whether it's, a college coach, or I feel like coaching pro at the women's league is pretty attractive. I think that would be a cool thing.
Yeah.
Or, kind of starting my own personal business of coaching and clinics and helping coaches and players out there is also something that I feel like I could do. So I feel like I will be in volleyball. In what capacity, I'm not quite sure yet. I just saw some Volleyball Mag salary posts out there, and I was like, these are pretty interesting. But volleyball all the way. I think I don't see a world where I'm not in volleyball.
Good. Glad to hear that. And now, we see the popularity of the women's volleyball sport taking off here in the States. Over in other countries, men's levels are, the popularity is there. What do we need to do in the States to, get awareness, get more scholarships for those, men's programs, and just get more kids playing?
Well, I think exposure is probably the biggest thing that we can do for boys and men's volleyball. I think the more that we can get it on TV or on YouTube or on TikTok, as maybe lame that sounds, I think it's important. I mean, volleyball in Japan grew immensely because of anime.
Yeah.
So as like trivial and corny and annoying as that sounds, like Japan is number 3 or 4 in the world because they're reaping the benefits of these new players that start because of this anime. So the more exposure, the better. I would love college games to be on YouTube. I would love there to be more things on TikTok and Instagram just showing our sport and how physical it is and how, strong and powerful that these players can be. I think the women are doing an amazing job. I think PBF is
Yep.
on YouTube. I've been watching a couple of those matches. Obviously, they're selling out and doing really well, but exposure, I think, is the key.
Yeah. I had the Orlando coach on, Amy Pauly, and they're doing the good things. It's a league for the players, and the popularity is wonderful to see.
Yeah, I mean, I've been watching the attendance numbers. It's striking to see. I've been really surprised. I hope they can sustain the level.
Yeah.
Obviously, they're getting crowds of 11,000. I mean, I feel like 5,000 would be pretty good, even just to be sustainable.
Yeah.
But it's really cool to see, and I know a lot of the players that are playing and the coaches that are coaching.
Yeah. And now, have you seen that volleyball anime?
I have. I used to do like kind of reviews and reactions on my YouTube. I haven't watched the whole. It's pretty cool. I mean, they do a job. I've always talked about, kind of the techniques and the way they explain volleyball and show volleyball. It's really well done.
Yep, it really is. I think part of the problem with, volleyball as a whole here in the States is just has that stigmatism of people think of backyard volleyball, but they don't see, when you see a men's game, the serve, 110 kilometers an hour, the power, people's eyes, it's like, oh, okay. It's almost like they don't respect the game, or I don't know what's a proper way to put that, but they don't understand, the athleticism.
Well, I think due to the lack of exposure, they just don't really know that men play volleyball.
Yeah.
A lot of the time we'll be going through airports and we say we're volleyball players, and they ask if we're like beach players or grass players. And we're like, no, we play in arenas, and we actually have, fans that come to the games and things like that. So for me, it's all about exposure. I think there was a video that the Out of System boys put out, Joe and Gage Worsley, asking young volleyball players who the national team players were, and the young players didn't know at all.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying everyone should know who we are, but with more exposure, they would. I think, every young basketball player in this country knows who LeBron James is. I would love everyone to know who we are. And is that like kind of an unrealistic dream? Maybe. But, like they had a bunch of people that just had no idea who the players were, and that was pretty frustrating to see.
Yeah. And I think, TikTok and YouTube Shorts are a great path for that, but often the ball goes too fast. If you see somebody do the jump serve, you don't see it in the short, and it's because of that side view. I don't know if we got to look at changing camera angles of how to capture that.
For sure. I think obviously the wide camera view is good for television. We need it 16 by 9, whatever we're going to call it. I like to do a lot of my videos from the back just to see kind of the float of the ball, the curve of the ball.
Yeah.
You can truly see the speed coming at you. But I think it needs to be a kind of a combination. I love when, TV networks, they'll show the play normally from the wide view and then go to the back view, for a replay or something.
Yeah, because with back view, you really see how the play develops. The hitters are moving, and it's just it's so much more than just ping pong back and forth.
Well, one of the comments that we get pretty often is like, "Oh, we didn't know there was rotations in volleyball, or like different positions that you had to move around." The back view, you can kind of get a better picture of that.
Yeah.
But exposure is probably number one.
Yeah, absolutely. And now, Taylor talked about you being, the king of TikToks. What does Taylor Averill need to do to step up his TikTok and YouTube short game?
Post more, probably. I don't see a lot of his posts, actually, especially on TikTok. I think he's more prevalent on Instagram probably.
Yeah.
It's really just like getting the shame out of your system and pulling the camera out. I mean, I'm not really doing embarrassing things on mine, just really showing volleyball. I know he's a little bit more goofy than I am, but really just like shame out the window. I'm going to film myself. He kind of does that, but it's more. Yeah. Taylor, you need more.
Absolutely. There we go. And now, being on YouTube and TikTok, it's different in the States than versus Europe. I found, I've got family in Europe and they're more reserved. How do you find it, like when you break out the phone, start doing some shorts, are you finding that like your teammates are sort of like scattering, moving, they don't want to be on camera?
Yeah, a little bit. I think in the US, our guys are a little bit more used to cameras in their faces. I mean, there's videographers everywhere in the States at practice at the national team, for colleges, which is great. I love that. Over here, practices are a little bit more private, not so much social media. It's mostly from the matches. But some of the clubs are doing some really cool things, and whether it's collaborating on posts or showing different highlights from practice, or maybe just the day before the game. I think it's really cool. But the guys over here are a little bit more reserved. They just haven't had so much exposure to the cameras and to the way it's going over here.
Yeah.
But they're learning. They're learning.
What's your plan for your content? Some more videos from you?
I haven't posted to YouTube in a while. Just haven't felt so inspired lately to put in that. I have some plans for the USA summer. I feel like heading into the Olympics, people love to see that kind of content.
Yeah.
Different algorithm strategies for TikTok, ways to make money, and getting exposure for our team. But I think come summer, between myself and my videographer, just trying to pump out 3 or 4 videos a day and getting people excited to watch USA volleyball.
Yeah. I love the fact that you started it with the purpose of just spreading the volleyball message of and your team. I think and rolling into the VNLs and the Olympics, it's prime time for men's volleyball to have that explosion.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a selfish portion of social media to put myself out there a little bit and whatever you can benefit from that. Yeah. But I feel confident in my heart that my intentions were good to give exposure to our team and the guys. And absolutely. I mean, once is that I had kind of an introduction of the Olympic team in 2021 and E! News reposted it. So and then I think like TMZ posted another one, or I don't know, not TMZ, I can't remember. But if small things like that can happen and highlight the volleyball world, I think the better. And that's truly been kind of my purpose in it.
Yeah. Yeah. It just takes one TikTok to go from, 1 million views, 2 million views. And, my other podcasts I do from gaming, they leverage TikToks to drive viewers to their streaming community on YouTube and Twitch. And it's just, TikTok is a great avenue for that. You never know what one video can just, do for volleyball.
I mean, it's really insane, kind of the videos that can go viral out there, whether it's TJ doing a sky ball and getting 15 million views, or I think my highest TikTok is a rally from a match that we played in, and it has something like 23 million views. And then my highest Instagram reel is just the guys walking through a Japanese train station. You just really never know. And then people, they'll click on the people that are tagged, or they'll look up USA Volleyball, and then, you just know what's going to happen. So that's what's been really cool about social media, is that I'll get a lot of messages saying, hey, they started volleyball because they saw our team, or they fell back in love with volleyball because of our team, or me, or another player. And that's all worth it for me when I see those comments.
Now, do you remember your first TikTok or YouTube short that got 1 million? Where you're like, holy crap?
Ooh, funny enough, on TikTok, I think it was completely volleyball unrelated. It was my niece and I posted a video, like my brother was late picking my niece up from me babysitting, and then she was going crazy, even though it was completely fake. That, like, I remember the like adrenaline rush I got from just seeing like the views go up and up, which is like a good and a bad thing for sure. Right. But it wasn't even volleyball related, which is funny about.
Oh, that's too funny. And now, away from the court, what does Erik like to do? What do you enjoy when you have some downtime?
Yeah, so most of the time over here, I don't do a whole lot. I live in a kind of a small town in Poland. So for me, it's, getting coffee or lunch with a teammate, or, the Smiths, David Smith, my US. So I just like getting out to eat with friends, family, teammates. eating, coffee, talking about life, and that's a lot of what I do.
Excellent. And now, you know, you've talked a little bit about when you guys were going through Japan. What was it like playing in Japan?
Japan is one of the best countries to play in. It's always organized, it's clean, it's run perfectly, almost like too perfectly, where you have to follow the rules too much.
Yeah.
And it's great. I have no complaints about playing in Japan. It's always structured really well, it's organized really well, and the fans are great. They're polite and nice, and the food is amazing. And we always have a lot of like great times in
Nice.
Japan.
Excellent. Any sponsors or anybody you'd like to give a shout out to?
My main sponsor is Mizuno Volleyball. That's the shoes I wear, shoes and knee pads and sleeves I wear every game here in Poland and obviously on the national team. So shout out to Mizuno Volleyball. That's what I'm wearing. If anyone's wondering, that's the shoes I'm wearing. And
what model shoe are you wearing right now?
Currently, I'm wearing the Mizuno Wave Momentum 3s, which are just out recently, but you can find them on the Mizuno website.
Nice. Excellent. Yeah, I've been a Mizuno guy since, you know, middle school.
Oh, nice. I can say within the past 2 or 3 years, their shoes have been amazing. I have no problems with them. I have no problem stepping into them and playing right away. And for me, it's been amazing.
Excellent. Erik, you survived the podcast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
But before I let you go, though, I'd like past guests, I ask you to shout out somebody you think would have a good story in your circle that, you know, should come on and share it.
Ooh, good person to share their story. I'm going to say my brother. My brother will have a lot of similar things to say. I mean, we grew up in the same household. We did grow up going to different schools, high schools, but he's a setter. He's 2 years older than I am. Had to kind of navigate the world a little bit differently, and I think he would have a pretty cool perspective. So I'm going to say Erik Shoji.
All right, there we go. Hey, speaking of different positions, I got to ask because, you know, ignoring what Taylor says, what is the most demanding position in volleyball?
All right. Demanding in what way?
We'll say, let's go IQ.
Setter.
All right. And then physically.
Physically. Oof.
I know we're going to cause some trouble here because, you know, the libero, they're sacrificing their body, throwing it everywhere to get the ball up.
I also am I'm not that guy that thinks that we're the most physically demanding position. I just would be not the smartest if I had to say that. That being said, Taylor and I always have this debate because middles are out 3 rotations of the game. They're literally sitting there for half of the match. I think if middles played the front row the whole time, it would be them. But I'm going to go with setter. And I think setter is just overall the hardest position. You have to be the most accurate. You have to be the most mentally tough, probably. And you're jumping, you're running the most on the court by far. And I have to side with my setters on this one.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, Erik, thank you so much. It was wonderful to meet you, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Yes, thank you very much. Thanks for having me, and we will be in touch.
Hey, she's a beauty.